immersive historical Edu-larps for college classrooms. Um, we're becoming more well known on the other side of the Atlantic, so we really wanted to come just to make people more aware of the series and the work we do. Introduce yourself.
I'm Michelle Ferguson. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Colorado in Boulder. He didn't explain, Simpson College is in Iowa, so we're both from the middle of the United States, and a little bit jet lagged.
Right.
Yeah. And I've been using this approach in my classrooms for about 8 years. He's been doing it for a lot longer than me. Okay, so hopefully we can get the slides up now.
So I'm going to try to launch it again.
Yeah, it's weird that it doesn't just come directly. Oh, it might be something where you have to move it onto the screen. Is that what your desktop is? Oh, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so, and this is our first time here, so we're very excited to find out more about all these projects and the good work that you do. Okay, we've done that. So, first I'm just going to talk about 5 key elements of the games that we make so that you've got a better sense of how they go. Over here, I didn't bring a lot because I brought everything in a backpack, but I've got 3 samples of the games that we have. So if you want to take a look at those, I can just put them there. None of them are going back across the Atlantic with me, so if there's one that you really like, you should just take it. The first element of all the games is they're highly interactive. And the students are interacting both with formal speeches, but also through informal conversation, and they do a lot of writing over the course of the game. So they're immersing themselves as much as possible intellectually, but then interacting with each other about it. All of the games also have quite a bit of structure. They're not free form, but all of them have a significant amount of setup, then somewhere between 4 and 8 sessions of gameplay. These are usually about an hour long. And then the thing that for LARPers comes extremely naturally, you've got to do the debriefing, is sometimes a tougher sell for academics who want to get on to the next thing. So convincing them that the debrief is essential. In terms of the content, all of the games are set at real historical moments, and almost all of them feature real historical figures, although some of them have composites where we've taken elements of different people and put them together. All of the game books have, about half of every game book is a selection of historical documents from the period, so that they're putting themselves into the original work. In all of this, one of the things that we strive for in terms of the outcome of all the games is that the outcome, if it's not what historically happened, and we stress that it's not a reenactment, but it still needs to be a plausible outcome, and they tend to be able to deliver this because they've immersed themselves in the period so much and in the documents. So this connects with the degree to which the games are contingent. They're deliberating throughout the game. This is like as scheming a bunch as you could ever see. She actually ended up coming to our school because she visited one day when we were playing a game, and she said, well, this is where I'm going to go. And she's trying to convince somebody here, but in the class, again, or game, because it's not a reenactment, the players get a lot of empowerment because they're making the decisions, as long as the decisions that they're making are plausible ones. So then, in the end, we have the debriefing where secrets are revealed, and a lot of the most important part of the learning of the game happens when you compare what happened in the game with what happened historically. And then they really begin to go, oh, well, I understand why they didn't do that thing. Or I understand why we did what we did, but I also understand why they did what they did. So there's a much greater degree of historical empathy with historical actors, which my students tend to roll in and go, what a bunch of dummies. Why don't they do the thing that obviously they should do? But then they get put in that position and they struggle to do as well as their historical counterpart did. Then I'm just gonna, but before I turn things over to my colleague, I'm just gonna quickly go through. This was a student survey of 450 students who played the games at different institutions. These are all at the university level. I don't think that these numbers will be surprising to any of you all because you know the power of LARP, but when I show these to non-LARPing academic colleagues, they're like, I disbelieve your numbers. So in terms of attendance, knowing that these games usually run about 3 weeks, the vast majority say, I have never missed a day of class. I'm always there because it's worth coming. And I don't want to miss things. And back to the idea of empowerment, I know that if I'm there, I can actually affect the outcome. And that in my absence, there's no way that I can. In terms of the reading, and the concern that some people have of, oh, you're playing a game, how much work are they actually doing? One of the things that we found is they're doing quite a bit of work because, again, they have intrinsic motivation now. They have an ability to influence the outcome of the game. But since the outcome of the game needs to be plausible, the only way to get there is to understand the situation and to understand the arguments that they can make. In terms of time commitment, we found, again, that they are very committed in terms of the time that they spend. I clumped it in with much more. It wasn't a category that I created on the initial survey, but by hitting the other button, something like 10% answered, I spent more on this class than I have spent on any class in my life, that they have totally committed to it. But importantly, there are these people that don't engage. So we encourage people to use multiple modes. Okay, this was the one. Oh, it's bigger than I thought. This percentage, 35%, 1/3, say I am engaged in my course with reacting games more than any other course. So a tremendous number there. Last one of these is the degree to which they interact with their instructor. And again, because they're now intrinsically motivated by the game, not only are they interacting with their fellow students more, but they're coming to their instructor. One thing that we do a lot of in US higher education is we have office hours where students can come by our offices. When you're running a game, there's usually then a line out in the hallway. Usually office hours is when you can catch up on your email. But when you're running a game, that is not the case.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the resources for finding more about what we are up to. So first off, we have a lot of published games. So these are ones that are in this format where they're actually available as a book. So the students would get the book for class, and then there are a whole bunch of other materials that are only available to the instructor, including roll sheets for the individual characters, a manual for the instructor on how to run the game, and so on. So 30 are already published with the University of North Carolina Press, and you can go to that website if you want to take a look at it. And
I also
we
have
have handouts.
We have nice little handouts, and I got the press to print them up with European ordering information. So for people that are in Europe, this is how you can get that. So I've got a big stack of those, so there's plenty for everybody.
Okay, there are another 9 that are coming soon that are in production. You can see just from the titles here, we've got games that are across the curriculum. There are a couple of games in this book on environmental science, international politics, on climate change that deal with questions around atmospheric science. They're meant to teach elements of chemistry in addition to teaching about politics, and you can choose when you play those kinds of games, how much do you want to emphasize the science versus the politics, depending upon the kinds of classes you're in. Got one on Japan 1941. Threshold Democracy, this is ancient Athens. This is the very first game that started all of this off over 20 years ago, where Plato's Republic is the central text that students are reading, and they're debating whether or not to put Socrates on trial. This one is one, Fourth Crusade. We have a copy of it that you can take a look at. We also have another game set in Paris in the late 19th century that's focusing on art history. And so it's debates over the academy, Impressionism, post-Impressionism, where students are actually learning as playing as artists or playing as art dealers or art critics, how to talk about art, how to analyze art, how to sell art even in that mode. So you can see we've got games across the curriculum that are published. We also then have a lot of unpublished games. So our online library has access to a lot of other games, right? 250 plus concepts. These are games, sometimes the author has a version that they've written that they can use in their own classroom, but they haven't yet put the materials together in a way that's usable for someone else. But you find out who they are, you send them an email, and that encourages them to get the work done so that then they can share the materials with you. But as you can see, we've got an additional 40 plus games that are available online for download and use in classrooms that hopefully someday will also become part of the published catalog. To get access to this, you have to become a member of the consortium. I think it's $25 US to be a member. And then that gives you access to all of those games for free, plus the instructor's manuals and roll sheets for any of the published games.
And I would say, just before you go to the next slide, if this is a thing you think you might do, take a picture of this address, because about a year ago we changed websites. So if you do a Google search for Reacting to the Past, that will take you to the old website.
And please send me the links.
Absolutely.
Okay, there are also a couple of books about reacting. So Playing to Learn with Reacting to the Past is a collection of essays by faculty who've done studies on how this works in classrooms. Mark Harns is the original founder of the reacting approach, and Minds on Fire is his book that's really introducing people to the idea of reacting and explaining why they might want to use it. And then, of course, our very own Nick Proctor has written a book on how to write games for reacting, what the elements of game design are for specifically a game that would fit within our series. We have a large community of representatives of over 500 colleges and universities that are members of our organization that is expanding globally. These are some of the countries we have members from. We've got members from others as well. You can get involved through conferences. Some of our conferences, especially with COVID, have been happening online, but we also have in-person conferences that we do at universities. My university hosted one back in June, where faculty get the chance, so these are faculty playing the game. They try out games in a sort of abbreviated version without all the homework at a conference in order to get a taste of the style of this kind of LARPing. We also have on Facebook a group called the Reacting Faculty Lounge. So if you want to look for that, you can join that. And there specifically, we now have a large group of people who are adapting the games for use in high school settings. And so we now have a Discord group called RTTP, that's for Reacting to the Past, in high school, if you are interested in thinking about using this for slightly younger students. Or you could just talk to me and Nick while we're here. We're here for the whole conference. All right. Any questions?
So what is the number of moderators or instructors compared to the number of students? Yeah, what is the ratio? Is it like 1 to 10?
If you're running a game?
Yeah.
It's just me, and then however many students.
And that's 30?
Yeah.
Is it 30 students, 100 students?
It depends on the size of the class. So the typical game is designed to be used in classes of anywhere from about 12 students on the small side to 30 or 35. Some games are intentionally designed to be used with much larger classes of 80, 100 students. And there are faculty in the community who have developed techniques for how to take a smaller game and scale it up for much larger classes. So I think the largest I've heard of is about 200.
Yeah, the largest that I've heard is 200 that was run at University of Auckland in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And the instructor, Jennifer Frost, developed a number of tools, mainly by having teams of students play the roles, rather than just having them as individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I'm lucky, I have a student who's played games with me before who comes and works with me in the classroom. But really, they're designed so that you don't have to have any assistance.
Okay, and just follow up to that, then how much mechanics do you have to enforce the constraints on this? Because you rapidly get into board game area, right?
Depends on the game.
Yes, yes.
So there are some games that are gamier, that have a lot of die rolls or charts that you might need to consult, usually at really specific moments in the game, so that as the instructor, you can be observing your students and watching how they're playing. You're not constantly looking to at die rolls. Other games have none of that, right? They're really more about the debate and the interaction, and not about game elements.
Yeah, but you talked about this, that the result of them of the decisions should be plausible, and there you have to have some mechanism to actually enable them to make meaningful decisions.
Right. The central mechanism for most games is voting. And most games have a master of ceremonies or a chair who conducts the votes rather than the faculty member. The places where sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated are where there are military operations or something like that. But the majority of the people in the reacting community are not gamers. So one of the things, one of my friends from the community, she said that if anybody showed up with a die with more than 6 sides, she was out the door. So that's the level of concern about gaminess. So we very consciously try to tamp that down as much as possible.
Yeah, but the idea is, sometimes when I put together slides, I've got pictures where it's just the students, and you can see that in these pictures too. And then I have a picture of me sitting in the back of the room, right, all by myself. And so when I'm running a game, I'm trying not to intervene, not to speak, to let the students be completely in charge of the classroom for that time period. And if I do intervene, it's usually sending an email in between classes, right, to try to keep things on track so it's still a plausible outcome.
Hi, I'm David, also from the U.S. I'm curious what departments this happens in, how many credits it fulfills, and what level of student.
Now the time is running out, so these people will still be possible to talk with during the fika break. So there will be coffee, and if you want tea instead, you can just talk to the personnel in the cafe. They will give you tea and some fruits and candies. And there is hand sanitizer just outside